Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Everybody, welcome to our big weekly Big Blend Radio podcast, right? So this is our new weekly Blend podcast. It's a merging of magazine and radio shows. We had our big daily Blend podcast. This is our second big weekly Blend podcast. And if you go to blendradioandtv.com, you can sign up to get our weekly Blend magazine that tells you what you missed the last week. And this podcast keeps you up to date with what's happening now and coming up. And this show is all about this week's holidays, observances, historic and pop culture happenings. And we've got a lot of music happening. And we're also really focused on the fact that it is Memorial Day weekend. It is also Military Appreciation Month. But our dates really go from May 28th through June 3rd. We're going to put music playlist links in our show notes, articles that we referenced during the conversation, and links also to recipes because Burger Day is coming up. I'm just saying, we have recipes for that. But most importantly, Nancy, are you ready? We got three good guests, really good guests, right?
It's going to be fun.
We've even met one in person, like finally. Two of them, all three of them have been on our shows for quite a few years, but eventually this year, this is our goal. We're going to meet them all. But we're going to start off with Joey Stuckey. Joey is here every fourth Sunday with us on our weekly Blend podcast. He is the official music ambassador for Macon, Georgia, which is the Southern rock capital of the world. I'm just saying. Yeah. He's an award-winning blind guitarist, a songwriter, a singer, composer, producer, radio and TV personality, as you'll hear. And you've heard him on the show. I know you have. He's a music columnist and educator and sound engineer and runs and owns Shadow Sound Studio. His main website is joeystuckey.com. And yes, if you go through the South, you will see Stuckey's candy and you must have it. And they are related, because Joey is really sweet. So welcome back, Joey. Sweet Joey.
I love it. That's good. That's clever wordplay. Always exciting. It's always good to be in your company, as you know. So I'm so glad to be here.
We love having you on the show. It's so funny because Nancy and I were in we're recording this from Lorton. I don't know where we are. We're in Virginia. Lorton?
Somewhere.
Lorton, I know someone will help us here in a second. But we are outside DC, and you were just in DC. We were in Maryland going, Joey is leaving because we got there. What happened?
Yeah, I left. Yeah, I left Maryland I think 2 days before you got there, something like that.
You knew. Did he stink?
They're coming. Get out.
Well, I can't see or smell. So as far as I know, you look and smell perfect at all times.
Oh, well, thank you. I like that.
We'll wait till after we have a hamburger.
Well, that's how I tricked my wife into marriage. I told her she'd always look and smell perfect. It worked. It's worked out.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. That is funny.
And we'll have been married 20 years this June.
Wow.
Oh wow. So hey, so that's a first celebration right there. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I love
Best
that.
thing ever happened to me.
Wow. So one tip for anybody in a relationship of how to do it.
Oh boy. How to do it?
I mean, not how to do it. I meant to have that longevity in a relationship. Let me clarify myself.
Please do. Well, the truth of it is, actually, to be serious for a moment, is to have good communication. And we very much, before we got married, sat down and had a conversation about what we thought marriage was and what we thought it meant and what kind of expectation there would be. And it's not a question of right or wrong. It's not like, okay, here's what I want and I'm right, and here's what you want and that's stupid. I mean, it's just a question of, do we have the same value system? Are we putting the same emphasis on the same things? I mean, if Jennifer likes to watch ER and I like to watch, Doctor Who, that's not a problem. We can get over that. If she comes home drunk every night and I don't, that may be a problem. So you have to, so you just have to figure out what you think marriage means and make sure that both people really have a similar, doesn't have to be perfectly the same, but a similar idea of what that means and what kind of responsibility you have to your partner. And so we had that very detailed conversation, and it wasn't an awkward conversation, but it was a serious conversation. And a lot of people are not comfortable with those kind of conversations. But I think they're integral to good relationships.
I
Yeah,
agree.
and that's not just
Mm,
in
totally.
romantically, right, or family.
Right.
Well, I mean, we got to think about that
Mm,
when we're talking about military history too. I think we're going to have Mike Guardia come on next, and he served in the
yeah.
army, and I think communication is part of it, and in music. That's a thing, and that's really interesting with you, Joey, being blind, because when Nancy and I were in the band and doing music, like, to me, you would look over, and that one look would tell the other musician, like, oh yeah, that's your lead,
Right.
or
Oh,
Right.
like, stop playing guitar for so darn, how you lead guitarists are, right? Put
nah,
it away
Lisa.
at
Yeah.
a certain
Yeah.
time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean,
I
right?
can't say you're wrong. I
Nah.
would like to, but I
So
can't.
you have to create a different communication system with your band, and you've been playing with your band for a while, though.
Yeah.
So
So, well, as far as that goes, I mean, basically, what I do is I I have been in several other people's bands. I have been in orchestras. I have been in ensembles. I've done all that, and I can do that. It's more complicated, but it is not beyond my ability. However, it's a pretty poor use of my time to jump through the hoops I have to jump through to make that communication possible and to negate the disadvantage of not being able to read sheet music. So I found I tend to play to my strengths, which I think is a good idea
mhm.
for pretty much any situation. So what that means is that I tend to be the leader rather than the follower. So if I'm leading, I don't have to follow anybody else. I'm the one telling everybody else where to go. And so that helps out. And
I
I
like
mean that
that.
exactly how it sounds.
I like that. I got the giggles. Well, yeah. I mean, that's because that's how you have your support network. I love that. And
But
I want to
I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say, I want to let you know that I cheat and use visual signals to my band all the time, but I just can't see them back.
But you're on stage, so
Oh,
that's good. You're
Yeah,
on
yeah,
stage,
yeah,
so that balances everything out,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
mm,
So I want to bring Mike Guardia. Mike is
Mike.
he's on our show the first Mike, right? We got two
mm,
mics. Mike Guardia,
yeah.
so Mike G. Yeah, he is
Mm,
military Mike. We've been calling him that for years. Military
mm,
Mike is an award-winning military historian. He's an author. I think we're at 25 books that he's been talking about on shows.
mm,
25. You
Yes,
might have seen
ma'am.
him on the History Channel,
wow.
right?
Mm,
He's on every first Monday. The next Monday, June 3rd. So see, this military theme is strong today. He'll be talking about D-Day, and his latest books are Coyote Recon: The Forgotten Wars of Colonel J.D. Vanderpool, and The Combat Diaries: True Stories from the Front Lines of World War II. Both are something when you think about Military Appreciation Day. Mike really writes the human story behind those who are out there in the field and making things happen, leading, and some of them are a little rogue in a good way. But I encourage you to go to his website, mikeguardia.com, and he's also on Amazon. So welcome back, Mike. Military Mike, to make sure I get the right one here. How are you?
Hey, Lisa, I'm doing well. Always a pleasure to be on the
good.
show.
Hey, it is good. I hear that it's warming up a little bit in Minneapolis
It
and
has
Minnesota.
finally. Oh my God, we have just gotten through the winter that wouldn't die, and
Mm,
this week it has been surprisingly warm. I think, as a matter of fact, ambient temperature outside right now is a balmy 78, which is great
Wow.
considering only 2 weeks ago we were just barely scraping by in like the mid 50s as our weekly high. But yeah, the weather is good, and it's sunny outside, and not too many showers predicted in the near future. So the 10-day forecast is looking pretty good.
Hey, I want to go back to where Joey was talking about communication being key in relationships. Is that the same kind of thing for in when you go into, battle and out in the field
Mhm.
and just in regular communication, some of what he was talking about, does that is that part of it in regards to military service? Is that communication?
Absolutely. Communication is so important.
mm,
We have this little mantra in the Army that says everything we do is based on our ability to shoot, move, and communicate. And you have to have all
oh,
three. And of those three, of that trifecta,
ooh,
the most important one is communication, because it's not just on the battlefield or off the battlefield, but all throughout the military, at every echelon. I have seen so many things go up in flames because of poor communication or somebody thought they understood something, but they really didn't, or they thought they got a message across, but they really didn't. So, and really just trying to find a universal communication style that can get the message across as clearly as you can the first time around. That really is an art form in and of itself. And I think that's a skill that you acquire over time. And I found that the best leaders were the ones who could communicate simply, and they could communicate effectively, to where there was, very little room for error in how somebody could misinterpret something. Because I found that 99% of the problems that I encountered in the military and even out of the military were just due to poor communication. People not really saying what they meant, people saying something but meaning something else, or just somebody misinterpreting what someone had said to them. So, yes, that communication is key, in and out of the military, and especially in relationships. You have to be able to communicate clearly and not rely on subtle hints, not rely on obvious hints. Just, open your mouth and say what's on your mind.
Yeah.
And, it's funny.
Nancy gets in trouble for that all the time.
Oh, I know. I read that online. The honest thing, it takes me back to my early legal training. I'm not a lawyer, but I've studied it relentlessly, and I am a music business consultant. So we talk about the law a lot. And the mantra we have in music business is make the language unambiguous. So you want to make sure that it's almost impossible to misinterpret. And that's key when you're writing contracts and stuff like that, where you don't want to be able to go in court. So, well, Your Honor, I thought it meant this, and it was open to interpretation. You want clear, simple language. Stay away from as many specialized jargon words as you can. And so that's another big part of it. Is just keep it so simple that it's impossible to misunderstand.
Oh, and that comes in marketing and sales too.
It does.
Yeah.
It's really because go ahead, Nancy.
When you're talking to somebody and you get emotional, or you use, like, your hands start moving because you're getting excited or whatever about what you're saying.
Joey feels the vibrations when that happens.
Yeah. So when what your face and your hands and your body says is not always what your mouth is saying. If you know what I mean.
Oh, well,
so
listen. Nancy's the second driver in the car on the country.
That's one thing you never have to worry about with me.
And I have to always tell Nancy to put her hand down and don't look too long at the other people. Like, watch it, because she is the nosy neighbor. She is. She's curious. She's a people watcher.
I can tell when someone's going to cut you off on the freeway. I can totally tell.
I know. And then she wants to tell them, this is how I feel about you doing that. And I'm like, you can't do that anymore.
It's a substitute for when we lived in the bush and it was all about studying the animals. Well, now I'm studying people. Well, and then drivers, when people are driving, that's the most animalistic.
Hey, we did good out here through DC. Getting lost yesterday, we did good. We managed it. Yeah, but I was gonna call our next guest, Mike Dunmeyer, and say, Mike, we're lost. We're in the middle of DC. How the hell do you do this? Wah, wah, wah. And by the way, I did figure out we are in Lorton, and so that's where we are. We're by the U.S. Army Museum.
Finish this.
Sorry,
I have noticed. No, because it's a good tip when you're driving. When a person kind of jiggles the steering wheel, left, right, 3 times, they're going to cut you off. I've seen it. I've watched it. It's like animal behavior at a water hole. I've watched it. And so Lisa does the driving most of the time, and pretty much all the time now. But I'm watching the traffic, and I see when the person in the lane next to you,
I can actually just feel it. We already can tell. It's defensive driving.
They're going to cut you off.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. They do 3 jiggles and like in and out of their lane, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I'm like, oh, they're coming.
You can tell, because that's hesitancy. That is I don't know, but I'm going to do it. And then it's like, Oh, I'm doing it because now I feel like I'm that.
And like,
No,
now I'm
no.
committed
See,
no
I
matter
like
what
people. You've
happens.
got to know where you're like, no, anyway, don't get me started. I want to bring Mike Dunmeyer on the show. Mike has been
Sorry.
on our show since the very beginning of Big Blend Radio, over 15 years. We think it's 16. This year's 16 years. He's been on the show with being the executive director of Ocean Champions, that really stood up for clean oceans for many years. He taught us a lot about politics, and I really wish I listened more. But no. Mike is amazing, and he's an entrepreneur as well. But now he's in the world of renewable energy, offshore wind here in the Eastern Shore. That I'm learning that is a term for this region, and it's a beautiful area. He's the Delaware Development Manager of U.S. Wind, and I know what he does. Communication is definitely key because because people in anything political, which energy is, people will take what they think they know and run with it, and it's not always correct. So anyway, Mike is very clear about what is right and what is wrong. And I encourage you to go to the website US Wind Inc. uswindinc.com. So welcome back, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, just fabulous. It's so great to be on with you guys again. And what a treat it was to finally meet after all these years. And you know, incredible that all of us were able to have success and become prominent enough to begin these conversations 16 years ago when we were all in our teens.
I'm still in my teens. I'm still in my
Exactly.
teens. I
Exactly.
look like
staying
right.
there.
No, kidding. No, listen. It was really cool. I mean, it was it's so cool to finally meet in person, but it's just, I mean, it's just, it's always better
funny.
to be in person, right? But it feels just like, oh yeah, we've known you for so long. Let's just, have our picnic and, continue on the dialogue. Nothing really changes on that level. It's like, keep the
Yeah,
dialogue going,
it was very
That's
comfortable. And
interesting.
actually it could have been another show sitting there on that bench looking over the pond and seeing
Oh my
seeing that
gosh.
bald eagle fly overhead. It was
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Was it
Wow.
oh
That was
where
awesome.
Tuckahoe State Park in Maryland. Everyone is
Tuckahoe, yeah.
beautiful. Tuckahoe is beautiful, and I found out there's another one up in New York too. So Tuckahoe is kind of a thing out in this region. But my communication in regards to the environment, because this is something I know over the years you've been on our show, and sometimes I mean, there's times where everybody gets all riled up, and that doesn't move anything when you get, angry and yell at people, or you must do this now, beat the pots and pans. That's kind of out the window. But on the shows, you would come on and people would go, no, we got to clean the ocean, no more fishing, none of that. And you're going, hello, there's some balance. And I always thought that over the years, whether it was Ocean Champions and now with US Wind, that you've had that, like, you've got to actually survey what's really happening before you go. You can't just be, you know what I mean? The emotional thing is
Emotional.
going
You
to what
can't
no,
Nancy
do it.
was talking about.
in the world I've been in, I do often walk into rooms where, you've got at least 50% of the crowd is aligned against you. And quite often emotions are involved and people do get heated. And one of the things I do pride myself on is just always keeping my cool, being in the moment. And, it really all comes down to establishing clarity, keeping things simple, and just making sure that you're going where they are. So you're understanding their perspective and able to come up with the information that particular perspective needs to be able to get a new understanding of things.
I like
That's
that.
good. Well,
Because you have to listen to actually to have that
know
true
what?
dialogue.
Listen.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I think that's what we're missing these days in
Wait, I'm
stuff.
sorry, what?
But yeah, what? Huh?
What?
I want to go. We're going to talk about Memorial Day weekend. This is airing on the Sunday, obviously the day before Memorial Day. But I want to go to Mike Guardia before we get into that, and just touch on what Memorial Day is. I know we did this with you last year, Mike, but I think we always need a reminder of how it came to be. You can ask Mike Guardia anything. I'm just going to say, he can answer anything about military history. Don't you have a master's in teaching in military, or is it
I
teaching
do.
a
Yeah.
master's in history? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
And if he wasn't around, I
Yeah, but-
wouldn't, he's taught so much. Yeah. I mean, over the years, it's incredible. I can actually sit in a conversation for 1 minute longer and say, I know that Mike taught me that. And then and after that, I can go, I know this part, and then I have to shut up and then do another interview with Mike and read another book of his, so Mike, but yeah, Memorial Day, how did that start? Because it's different than Veterans Day and Remembrance Day in a way. England is Remembrance Day, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. So the whole driving force behind Memorial Day was that we really wanted to have a special day that was honoring specifically those who had fallen in battle and those who had made the ultimate sacrifice. Up to that point, we had Armistice Day, which of course today is Veterans Day, honoring all veterans, past and present. But to have a special day that was dedicated to those who had made the ultimate sacrifice, we really felt that that was something that needed to have its own special day of remembrance, and also as a time of solemn reflection for what it actually meant to be an American. And in a broader sense, I think it was a stroke to keep the strong ties of community as the nation grew and got bigger and bigger. Because up until recently, the past 50 years, pretty much everyone had skin in the game. Even when we weren't at war, there was still a peacetime draft, and it was expected that at some point in every young man's life, he was going to have to put his dreams and ambitions on hold and serve a 1 or 2 year stint in the armed forces. And that during his time in uniform, there was a very real possibility that he would be called upon to put himself in harm's way. And that really just ties in together with the whole broader theme of reinforcing what it means to be an American, not just as an individual, but as part of the broader community, and what it means to take a collective sense of identity when we're talking about our nation as a whole.
And when you think now, because they say like the World War, we've talked about that on the show with you. I think Combat Diaries, your one of your latest books, really touches home on these stories of those who have served during World War II, and we're kind of losing that generation now. And I know we're gonna do a cool music playlist on this, but I think, do you think Memorial Day right now, it really means something? Because it's not just the day, it's Military Appreciation Month. We have programming all this weekend, everyone. Lots of programming about military programs, because we need more and more of them to support our men and women that come home and their spouses. It's another huge thing that often gets forgotten. But even having these parks that Nancy and I have gone through, we have got to make our Memorial Park map, because I think every town has one, Mike, and you start to realize, when we were in like Baltic, Connecticut, it's a tiny town. It's near Mystic, right? Mystic Pizza, the movie. Come on, Mike, you know the 80s movies. I know you do.
Of course.
Right? So we were in Baltic, and they're one park, and they have a river, and it's beautiful out there. But here's their community park, very small. This is a tiny, I don't even know if we can say, like, it's a township out in Connecticut, I think, or a borough. And the memorial, when you see everyone's names and you're looking around going, these are like really historic families. The homes are historic. These are families that have been there for so long. And it's usually Vietnam, maybe Korean, because we rarely hear Korean War, except for Mike is on our show. And then you see that in World War I and World War II, and you see how many people in one tiny community, but it's really more stretched out community. That is mind blowing to me in all the places we've been. I think that's an important thing, and something that we've really realized as we do our Love Your Parks tour, are like, not only are you preserving this beautiful piece of land that's restful, and cemeteries do a really good job too of that. And we need to fund and help them to maintain the cemeteries. But I think these memorial parks, is that part of Memorial Day, or is that kind of started, do you think, beforehand? It's just communities going, we need to honor someone that didn't come home.
Well,
It's a
yeah, it grew pretty much out of the same mentality, and because you had these different memorials that that had populated all across America, and they were really just parts of like the town square, or they were part of a park project that some local community fathers would get together and organize, and they would make a monument honoring those who had passed away in any number of the recent conflicts. I mean, for instance, there would be a memorial honoring those who had fought and died in the Civil War, or those who had died in the Indian Wars of the American West, or even the Spanish-American War. I think you really start to see it hit critical mass in the span between the war with Spain and World War One. And really afterwards, you see them start to become a lot more permanent fixtures. And that span of about 25 years, that 25-year impetus really got the wheels turning for making specific days for remembrance and making specific spaces for remembrance, and not only remembrance but reverence as well.
I think it's a way to keep it in the forefront. I'm not always a fan of like, oh, it's Black History Month. To me, we should be representing all the time, right? And keeping that Black history, military history, Irish history, all of, everything should always be represented. But it is really kind of true that human beings need that jolt of remembrance. And then as we're doing all this interesting thing of statues and everything, and looking at what books get to be banned and not, and it's just getting to a point where I think these days are really important to just kind of not let history go by. You know what I mean? Don't forget, and not many people make a habit of going to cemeteries like Nancy and I, but we like it. I mean, it's because you go to a cemetery and you'll find someone from the Revolutionary War, or like
It's
Geronimo's
amazing.
grandson,
And the horse grave.
the horse grave, the Civil War horse. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the other
that
thing.
was
I
to
mean,
me like, oh my
mhm.
gosh. The
Yeah,
horse
what
was
about,
it
yeah,
was so honored that they actually buried the horse in the cemetery. I
the
mean, who
human
does?
cemetery.
Yeah, in a human
Mhm.
cemetery, they buried the horse out of honor for what that horse did during the
Six
war.
battles in the Civil War. Six battles he
Yeah.
went through and still came
And I was
home.
like, now that's impressive to
Mhm.
me. That was like, wow.
That was
It's
Coldwater,
like,
Michigan.
yeah. And I was like, who does that? That's the first and only time I've ever seen that.
Yeah, Mike, what
So,
about the animals that go to war? Like dogs
yeah.
and,
Yeah,
Well, not
yeah,
dogs.
so
I mean,
much
just the armed
anymore,
forces too. Horses
but
were a
yeah.
big part of war.
oh
They were,
yeah,
they were,
in history.
and it was always a point of reverence for any trusty animal that could go into combat.
Mm,
For years when we were still riding into battle on horseback, it was
mm.
understood that you had to have direct synchronicity with the horse that you were mounted on, because that was a living, breathing creature who
Mm.
had its own temperament, who had its own, tolerance to heat and cold, and what it could and
Noise.
couldn't take, because horses could just as easily get shell shocked as men could, and
Oh,
you had
sure.
to be you not only had to be an experienced rider, you had to have a certain amount of finesse in being able to relate to that animal, and
Right.
it's no big secret that they say little kids and animals can always tell if a person is bad.
Mm.
Like household pets will shy away from anyone who they
Oh,
think
yeah.
is off. So in a sense, whether or not someone was a good fit for the cavalry would be, how well they were able to form a working bond with the animal that they were entrusted with. Because you know, if you didn't have a good relationship with that animal, they would let you know it. And to any onlooker or bystander, the message would come across pretty quick that, oh wow, that animal really does not like that person. There's probably a reason why.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
so it was always something that was to be taken with a very high degree of reverence. The
As
relationship with
dating.
the animal,
Yeah, if you're
and also
dating,
with the military
oh,
police dogs.
oh, oh, and you're not allowed to play with them. You know, when you go over the borders into Mexico and stuff, and you come back through Border Patrol, and the dogs, I mean, they're all German Shepherd, and you're just like,
Oh, they always
but you're
wag
not
their
allowed to
tail
play with
at
them.
us. I know
Yeah.
you're not allowed to pet him and you shouldn't talk to him, and the guards at the border get really kind of frustrated. And I just like, oh no, look at you. And the dog starts wagging its tail.
Mm,
And then the border patrol people get a little,
mm.
like, stop
You're
it.
not supposed
And
to.
I
You're
understand. I know you're not supposed to,
you're
but
not to
it
play
just,
with the Mounties either, with the Royal
I
Canadian
know, but it just is a
Mounted.
kinship thing.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
The animals know, and they know. Even like the security, like they're doing their thing. They're very highly. I mean, I just think we should give a shout out to the animals too. And I want to know, Mike Dunmeyer, um, do 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 animals play into who your daughters date? Like in regards to dog, like if the dog doesn't like them and you don't like them, you know there's a problem, right?
Absolutely. In fact, I raised both of my dogs to not like teenage boys that were coming over to the house. So we definitely had,
Period.
they were put on notice.
Oh, see, this is it. This is it. Well, see, Joey, this is the whole thing. We've come back on full circle now of communication, right? This is the full circle. It's interesting how it all works out. But before we get into Memorial Day, I do want to let everybody know that May 28th, which is today, happens to be National and International Burger Day. Now, the recipes, we have recipes in the show notes. So check it out, whether you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're listening, check out those links for burgers. But Joey, what kind of burger? What are you gonna have an Elvis burger with me with peanut butter and pickles? I just don't want bananas, or what are you gonna have?
that's
You know,
crispy.
there's a lot of good burgers here in my hometown, and there's several restaurants that do it really well. But my favorite restaurant here is called for the burger is called the Rookery, and it's been an institution here since I moved here about 20 some odd years ago, and gosh, it's probably been longer than that now that I think about it. But anyway, they have two burgers that are pretty amazing. One has pimento cheese and sweet pickles, which is I
You
love.
really are in the South. You're in the South now. You
We
really are.
are. We are in the South. And the other burger that my wife adores, and I have become a fan as well, intuitively sounds disgusting, but it's actually quite delicious. It's peanut butter and bacon.
See, that's me. That's
Huh.
an Elvis burger. Yes, that is an Elvis burger. And now the true Elvis burger has bananas on it. And he used to have peanut butter and bacon and banana sandwiches. And Elvis served in the military. That ties into your music playlist, one of your picks. But I peanut butter and bacon burgers, but you have to have the pickle because that cuts the butter. It's like I eat peanut butter and pickle sandwiches all the time.
Huh.
I'm
Well,
not pregnant,
they call
just to
that
make sure
burger here
everyone knows.
in my hometown. They call that burger is actually called the Jimmy Carter burger here. So
Really?
Oh,
Oh, well,
yeah,
yeah, that makes sense,
wow.
all the
Georgia.
burgers are named. All the burgers are named for famous Georgians at this restaurant. But yeah, I
Oh
do
my
love a
God.
good burger. And now that I'm trying to lose some weight, I still can have a burger. What I do is I just take the top bun off. I don't eat both sides of the bun. So I just which is a little messier, but saves me some good calories.
Oh, well, here you go.
He's
Uh,
a he's a one bun burger dude.
oh, Nancy, what
Yeah.
are you having on
Wow.
your burger? I want to go to
What?
Nancy on her. What are you having
Well,
on
you
your
know,
burger? I know she
you,
wants bacon.
bacon. You have to have bacon. You have to have cheese, and you have to have pickles.
Sounds
After
good to me.
that, I don't. Yeah, I don't care if it's beef or chicken, because we've had chicken
What
burgers.
about fake
What about
meat?
turkey?
Turkey, yeah, yeah, we've had that.
Or how about those patties made out of beans?
Okay, I pass on that one.
I think there's a double entendre in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we do have Mike Dunmeyer here, who's into wind. So I think bean burgers help. I
There's
mean,
a triple entendre in there.
Mike Dunmeyer, can you hear us okay? I know we're going in and out a little bit here.
Yeah, we're going in and out for some reason.
Yeah, we are. But Mike, what's
Nancy's
on your burger?
clear, but you're a little,
But yeah, Lisa,
Well,
you're going in and out.
Well, make sure Mike answers what he wants on his burger. Mike Dunmeyer.
I can go two ways. There's a place in town. But kind of plays the TV show as well, and it's delicious. It's got fried onion rings, tomatoes, really good cheese, a really healthy serving, and with barbecue sauce and bacon, of course. And it works really, really well. But personally, cool. I really like to focus on a few simple tastes there. So I love, a really good thick burger, tomato, and always avocado. Those three things work really, really well together.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, and we had the Royal Farms chicken with you. That was good.
Yeah.
Gotta give them a shout out. That was good. I want to go to Mike Guardia. What burger are you having?
Well, let's see. I probably have to go with a double meat cheeseburger, bacon, avocado. Anything else is negotiable.
Avocado, I'm with you on that. The avocado, even if you have eggs Benedict, you have to put the avocado in it. Put the egg in the avocado.
Put the lime in the coconut.
Avocado, I was scared to go to the Midwest because I was scared that there wouldn't be avocados. I was scared to go anywhere that wasn't in the South if they didn't have avocados. I'm like, that is a superfood that everybody must have is avocado.
It's a very valid fear, Lisa.
It is.
Wouldn't it be interesting if you went into a restaurant and they named the burgers after presidents? So
that's what Joey's does.
Yeah, like Andrew Jackson or Abraham Lincoln burger, or what would you put on it? Like you picked your favorite president.
Abraham Lincoln would have to have a hot dog because of the Lincoln log.
What?
Oh boy.
That's an interesting correlation.
Sorry. Oh my gosh.
All right. How did we get there?
I don't know.
But if you pick your favorite president and make a burger that would, in your mind, represent that president, what would you put on the burger?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, think about it. Isn't that interesting? Like, what would you put on it? Like,
well, the Ronald Reagan burger should have to have jelly beans because he liked
he liked jelly beans.
He liked the jelly beans.
Yeah.
And an Obama burger would need pineapple for the Hawaii connection.
Oh, good call.
And he liked beer. He liked cheap
ham
beer
and pineapple. Too. Oh, a slice of ham on your burger with pineapple. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Nah, let's have ham. I don't know. Like Guardia, what would you say? What about Truman? We're recording on Truman's birthday.
Oh, then he would Truman would cut off everything because he was frugal. He's a good president.
Well, I don't know. I think Truman would probably put on the burger whatever his wife would have, because Lord knows he spent an inordinate amount of time trying to win her affection. So.
Oh,
wow.
Oh.
See, Eisenhower would have the road trip burger. They would have to have bacon because it looks like it's got the center divide.
He'd have the interstate burger.
Yeah, the interstate. When you have the center divide. Yeah.
And for some reason, my grandmother absolutely idolized Eisenhower. She just loved him. And every time I went to stay with her, I just got this earful of Eisenhower. I was like, oh, wow. Okay.
Listen,
I don't know. I guess she had a major crush on him or something. I don't know, but she
Wow.
just thought he was the best ever.
Well, I want to let you all know that this is also an important thing on Memorial Day. May 29th also happens to be National Alligator Day. Now,
Oh,
this
God.
is no, come
yikes.
on, listen. There are
Gator
buddies.
burgers.
I love no, don't eat the gator. They do in Louisiana. We
I
know people
mean,
that
I'd
no,
rather
but
eat the
come
gator than the other way around.
no, but the gators are
I
so
don't want,
cool.
I don't want to eat a
Yeah, but they
gator.
will
They
chew you up.
they have been in
Oh
existence
no,
for
but
35
you
million
know what?
years.
And you know what? Sometimes we've been in swamps and we just look at them and they don't
We just
blink.
hang
We always blink first. Yeah, so
Yeah,
like,
and that's
look
not
at
good.
who blinks first, you
Is the
know?
submissive
And
one.
it's
You should
no,
never play a game of chicken with an alligator.
No.
no, but the alligators are so like they just suss you out. They look at you. They
I
And
did
they
film
and they
think,
one
kind
eating a turtle, and you could hear
but they're just
the
like, I'm
shell
biding
crack. It
my
was
time till you fall in the swamp and I can eat
listen.
you.
I brought this up because Joey is in Macon, Georgia, and Georgia is home to the Okefenokee Swamp,
Oh
this is
which
true.
no.
where gators live, and we've filmed many gators there. And I mean, you're right there with them. And our tour, our Love Your Parks tour, started because we went to the Everglades and we
Mhm.
saw a kid throw a
Oh.
empty can of soda
Oh
into a
no.
nest of alligators, and the
Oh, we
parents
were
didn't
so
say anything, and no one said anything. And we just said, you
that's
know what, some
we
education needs to happen here. So that is kind of
because
one of
how do you
the
go get
things.
it out, you
You
know?
know, you're gonna
If
send a park
Yeah,
it
ranger there, like, come on.
send a goat.
So yeah,
but
you know,
they were
no, send a
German, so you
politician.
couldn't even
Uh-oh.
you no, but they only spoke German, so you couldn't even talk to them and
No,
say,
but it
"Hey,
was,
like,"
but this is the education of like
but
these are living. I
mm,
mean, these are dinosaurs there, you know.
Yeah.
So I just want to say it's
this
Gator
is
Day, and
awful.
we love alligators. And Merritt
I think
Island
they're
National
cool.
Wildlife Refuge will be the park of the day because it's next to Cape Canaveral, and I
All right.
believe Cape Canaveral. I mean, that's where the space, the rockets go off, and people can go to the national seashore. So this is what's cool about this national seashore, which and I have been to, and you can see
Mm,
gators. You can be on the beach. It's one of the most pristine beaches
mhm.
on that side of the coast of Florida, we're back on the eastern shore, but it also is a nudie beach too. They have two nudie beaches. You can be topless as a woman. I don't know about the men being bottom, but it's a nudie. It's a naked. They have two
That's a
naked
different
beaches,
thing.
so you can
Naked.
watch the rockets go off, be naked, and see alligators all in the same park. I'm just
That's a hell of
saying.
a trip.
What
That's
else
a
do
hell
you
of a trip.
need?
I
I
know.
What,
I
but
couldn't. I
The
could
problem is I
not
don't quite
believe
have
it.
the figure for that. I don't have the figure that I feel comfortable being naked on the
but
beach.
but really, but
No, me
why?
neither. No, I'm
But
just
A
saying
lot.
no.
I
I
could
don't.
There's a
scar people for life, I suppose. I could scar them
no,
psychologically by being naked.
but
Oh,
we if humanity took so long to invent clothes and get it right, and
Yeah.
we're
yeah.
still working on that.
So
And now it's like,
listen.
oh, run naked.
If I went naked on a beach, my song, because I'm going to add this to the playlist,
Oh
is "See You
boy.
Later,
Oh,
Alligator." Alligator. Had to bring that up. Mike Guardia, were there any place like didn't it happen like in places for military serving that suddenly they were in like that kind of
oh,
situation where people were naked and like just different cultures and stuff like that for the military going out and like, ooh, that's a different culture. That's an eye opener. Didn't that kind of
Uh,
happen in some
well,
places?
yeah, in history.
well, yeah, in a matter of speaking, that's very similar to what the Army of Occupation experienced when they set up shop in occupied Japan, because they found out, um, just as a matter of course, that the Japanese society as a whole didn't have any societal or religious hangups about sex. In fact,
Mm,
they encouraged it. And the American GIs, who, many of them at this point had been away from home for 4 years, hadn't seen a woman, they took full advantage of it. And, it was not unusual for any number of the American GIs to keep a number of Japanese girlfriends in the town, and even for a few soldiers to oversleep at a local brothel,
mm,
just because they saw it as as a as a pure situation of supply and demand, because this was
It's a
something that
it's a health
this was something that
retreat.
Japanese society celebrated, and the American soldiers were certainly willing to get their fair share of it. So
Wow, the supply and demand. That's
Well,
crazy.
no, but I mean, in our travels, especially in different parts of Africa, the the restrictions or whatever you call it that we have here are so strict compared to other countries that I wonder, like, okay, I know we were settled and eh, oh boy, I gotta really watch my language here. But anyway, um, the lack of freedom here in respect of, okay, sex and nudity and personal relationships and all that, it's far stricter than what most people think compared to other civilizations in other countries. And, we always kind of feel like America's a forerunner of this and that, but not really. We're
Hmm.
kind of behind in some areas and kind of advanced in other areas. But when it comes to nudity and being natural in the environment, I mean, if you see a naked person on the street, most are cops.
Well,
And that just
I,
ruins my whole weekend.
but listen, I didn't know we were going to talk about this. But then you think
I
about
know,
like
but
uniforms,
it's a funny
like
thing.
what,
Like,
but
so is
what
it
you're
against the
wearing.
law to run down the street naked in most counties and cities? Absolutely.
Wow, this is going to
It's
lead
against
back to
the
the hamburgers and
okay.
the alligators
Okay.
somewhere. I don't know where. Like, but I want to go back.
It's
Like this
funny.
leads to
Sorry.
uniforms, though, right? Wearing, I mean, because if you're naked, like in Africa, like
I mean, that's kind of a uniform.
Shaka Zulu,
Yeah.
they just had like their little thingy around their waist, right? Little pelmety thing, and but they went barefoot. And I have a thing about Shaka Zulu. I think he was one of the most badass military
He's a
leaders of all
military
time, and he
strategist.
took out the British so well when he did the
Yeah, he
crawl and
did.
the circle, and he just
Dude,
like wiped them out. And he led
he
people over fire. I mean, I know Tony Robbins, I think that's his name. Tony Robbins leads people over hot coals and whatever. Shaka Zulu
no,
was doing that a
whatever.
long time ago with his troops. They ran over hot coals, thorns, everything barefoot because they could
But he
move
got
faster.
strategy, man.
He had
had
strategy. He was a
battle
badass.
strategy.
Yeah. So, Mike, when it comes to uniforms for those who serve, like I mean, there's bullet vests and bulletproof vests and things like that, depending on who, what, and where. But I don't know. It's like rugby versus football. Football, they're all padded up. Rugby's like, I'm gonna get you bare fist. Like I'm just going out there, right? So when
boy.
it comes to military, like the clothing, you don't want your clothing to hold you down, right? Your boots should still they're heavy, but I mean, isn't that where your physique and your uniform has to meet and match in a way?
well, yeah, I mean, I won't say every uniform decision, but most of them are made with a team of experts who look at everything from functionality to how it will facilitate good ergonomics on and off the battlefield, and really just how it can survive the rough and tumble world of what we call fatigue duty, and that's actually where the term fatigues came from. Just things that will keep a soldier protected from the basic elements, and one that can facilitate good mission accomplishment. And that's really been the driving force behind every uniform that we've had as a military for the better part of the past 100 years.
Wow. See how I got us back off the nudie thing? See? Full circle. I did not know that about
you got us
fatigues.
dressed.
I know. I got us dressed. Okay, so I want to touch on Memorial Weekend and stories. And Mike, I mean, you've written 20. Is it 25 books? Am I getting this number right? Because I know you got more. And finally, because he's always had a bigger number. and he writes about, the actual soldiers. And then also you learn also things about, if he's writing about F-14s, F-15s, and about who flew them, including Russian women, right? Like he's just always got who's doing all, he's the humanity story behind military, like the people, and who they were. And I think that's so very important. And that is a thing about Military Appreciation Month, Memorial Day, Veterans Day. And we're going to go all the way through, D-Day's coming up too when we look back then. But I want to go to some stories here. And Joey, I know we're going to talk music. I don't know if you have family in the military, but I want to go to Mike Dunmeyer, because this is not a story we knew until we sat down and had a picnic overlooking a lake, and a bald eagle flies over. And he's like, well, did you know this story about my grandfather? And we both stopped short and like, dude, you need to be on tomorrow's show. Like seriously. But this is one of those stories that talk about heroes. Number one, I think anyone going out to go into war and to be part of the workings to protect and serve, right? Whether you're a mechanic or a medic, there's so many people involved in what makes the military happen, is a hero. But your grandfather stands out as like, holy cow. So do you mind telling everybody the story?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. And I think, the follow-on piece too is how much, it affects families, because this sent our family on down several courses that obviously would not have happened without these things. But just to start from the beginning, like I told you guys over the weekend, my grandmother in the mid 1930s was on a boat bound for the Philippines because she was engaged to a serviceman who was stationed out there. And she was going there to get married. And on that same boat was my grandfather, William James Dunmeyer, who during the course of that journey talked her out of marrying the guy that she was going to see and into marrying him. So truly, obviously gifted with a silver tongue. But they get there. I assume it's a little uncomfortable for a while, but they address that issue, and a whirlwind romance ensues. They get married. A year and a half later, my dad is born, and they're there for a couple years. And my grandmother told stories about this period constantly. It was really the happiest time of her life. It was a wonderful time for her. But you guys know that the years and what's going on. So they reached a point where it was getting dangerous. So my grandmother and my father were evacuated. My grandfather stayed behind. He had gone to West Point. He was also in the Army, and was one of the battle and bastards of Bataan. And he survived the fighting, was taken prisoner, survived the death march, survived all of the atrocities of prison camp. And towards the end of the war, was being transferred on an unmarked boat from one prison camp to another. And at the time, the United States believed that that's how the Japanese were moving troops around. So the U.S. unfortunately bombed that ship, and he didn't make it out of there. And some years later, in school, I met a kid, and we started talking about our histories. And his grandfather was also in World War II, also in the Philippines, also died on a boat under seemingly similar circumstances. We each went back to our families and asked questions, and it turned out that they were on the same boat. His grandfather had actually survived, and as he called it, it was my grandfather that helped save him. And that kind of related to what my dad had been told, was that my grandfather kept going down to help bring more folks out, from the hold to get them out to safety. And at one point didn't make it back up himself. So he did have that sacrifice.
Well,
I've heard that, but then I hear it again, and I'm like, still, wow, because everybody's different, and how do they react in the situation? Men, I have to say, men are always expected to act more heroically than women, and we're backup crew.
Yeah, backup. Yeah. But I want to go to Mike Guardy on this real quick, and Nancy, you're breaking up, or maybe I'm breaking up. Mike Guardia, you know the time period and everything that Mike Denmeyer was talking about with his grandfather about these boats, or should I say ships, with what was going on with the Japanese at the time.
Yeah, so this was right around 1943, 1944, and even one of the guys who I wrote about in the combat diaries, he spoke about this in passing. You know, it right after the fall of Bataan, you know, there was a big, shall we say, transfer of labor, and a lot of the POW internees were being put on ships from the Philippines back to the Japanese mainland, and the reason being was that, you know, they wanted to put more POWs to work in the hometown industries to support the ongoing war effort against the U.S. Because, you know, by the middle of 1943, it was obvious to many in the Japanese high command that they were on the losing end of this war, and they wanted to put as many bodies as they could into the industrial production, which is why a lot of American POWs ended up working in the Japanese coal mines. And yeah, in order to you know, get that supply of labor into, you know, the islands of Honshu and Hokkaido quickly, they would put them on these unmarked ships. Well, you know, when people make too many uneducated guesses, or they connect dots that aren't really there, or, you know, they just they choose to err on the side of being overly cautious. You know, there was an intel picture painted that, oh, the Japanese are using these merchant ships as a means to transport, you know, troops under the guise of neutrality. And to an extent, they were doing that, but they were more used to transport civilian labor. So pretty much anything that could be construed to be a Japanese cargo ship was fair game for Allied submarines, Allied warships, and and a lot of the fighter reconnaissance planes. So it was a sad circumstance of war, and it actually reminds me of something else. You know, it's not too dissimilar from other stories that I had come across, where there were American POWs and American internees who actually got killed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki when we dropped the bombs on both of those cities. You know, it's sad. I mean, granted, you know, those nuclear weapons were a necessary evil to win the war, but the collateral damage that I don't think anyone ever considered was, you know, hey, we have at least 24 American POWs in both of these cities that are going to be dying alongside, you know, however many hundreds of thousands of Japanese that get killed. So
yeah,
I mean,
and you know, I don't know how well tested those implements were. Let me just put it that way.
well, I
I
think
think
you
everything
have to
was
do it.
done in such a rush
Hey, but it's
that
all part of our park system.
I know, well, I know, but for the families, it
Mm-hmm,
was devastating. And,
mm-hmm.
you know, it's not like you could go pick and choose who gets to go here, who gets to go there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, war is always like, yikes.
Yeah, it's hard
Yeah.
because even, you know, when we think about, you know, it's never, it's complicated. It's
Oh,
complex, it's
totally.
complicated, it's painful. I mean, that's a painful memory, but a heroic memory for your family, Mike Dunmire, I'm talking to, with your grandfather. I mean, at the same time, you know, like what a hero he was, saving people and just kept going, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
and at the same time, of course, you know, my father never really got to know him. I, of course, never met him. My other grandfather was in the Navy and was at Pearl Harbor, and he fortunately survived and came home. And he got to be
wow.
a big part of
Mm,
my life. But as I was telling you guys, you know, it there are a
mm,
couple big forks that came off of this for the family, and this is the case for, you know, all families are impacted by this when these things happen.
mhm,
But um, my dad was a really good baseball player, and in his senior year of high school, the Orioles wanted to sign him to a minor league contract. And they approached him the same day that he got his acceptance to West Point. and he chose
Oh.
to go to West Point. And really his reasoning for doing that was he wanted to know his father. He left when he was 2, so he had no real memories of him. But what he knew is that West Point was incredibly important to him, and it was a big part of how he saw himself. The duty, honor, country that is taught there was important to him. And so my dad wanted to experience that, and my grandmother eventually remarried and had another son 10 years after my father. And that husband unfortunately died when my uncle was very young. So my dad raised my uncle, and he looked up to him, and so he also went to West Point because of his, reverence for my dad. So we were, a long-term military family. Then there are other issues of this as well. But you think about, how the ripple effects of the sacrifice people make through the generations.
Was that's the same for you, Mike Guardia, right? Military Mike, that your family also served, and then it continues down through the family of people serving.
That's right.
It's part of how it works. Joey, is there military in your family? Anyone?
Yeah,
that
there
served?
actually is. Yeah, both my grandfathers, my mom's dad, and then her stepdad both served in the Navy, and my uncle, whose birthday is June 3rd.
Oh wow!
He actually was ended up with the rank of lieutenant commander in the Navy, and was there on D-Day, landing boats.
Wow!
Oh wow!
Yeah, and then he also was part of. Later on, he was also part of the naval mission helping NASA. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm 95% sure I'm correct about this. He was out on one of the ships that did the recovery when John Glenn's capsule went into space. So I mean, he was such an interesting fellow, and literally, came from that generation that just never quit, no matter what happened. Just never stopped, and always tough. And he was just really interesting guy. He had pancreatic cancer that did not get him, which is very rare. I mean, that's a very aggressive cancer. He had skin cancer twice, and he finally passed away around 99. So he lived a long, productive life that was very steeped in service. And I always think of him this time of year.
It doesn't it also, when you think about music, right? That's what we're going to touch on and close with that on the show, is music. There's a lot of holidays and food and everything, but really, you can't beat a good burger, right? When you talk about food.
That's so true.
You really can't. Even if and listen, the bean burgers are okay too, and you could get Beyond Meat burgers and all that.
I don't have a problem with them as long as no one stands behind me.
Yeah, that's when you leave the restaurant, and that's how you clear tables.
I feel like there has to be a balance, Lisa. I feel like I should be able to stay in the restaurant, but I should just warn people not to stand behind me.
But I just say that's how you clear tables.
I mean, if you really need a private conversation, I guess you could.
Yeah, I mean,
but just it should be a line for bean burgers to go, and then if people are staying,
burgers are good for your heart.
That's my next there should be entrepreneurial thing. Bean burgers to go is my next business.
Yeah.
So patent pending on that.
Burgers to go.
Actually, let's change it. Blind bean burger to go. Because
okay. Well, listen.
Yeah.
This way we're gonna help. We're gonna help Mike over at US Wind. We're going to help him produce Wind.
Absolutely, yeah. Mike. I'm your boy. I am here for you, Mike.
That's and when people are concerned about the full-time reliability of Wind, but Joey, I believe you can close the gap, right?
And let me tell you something. I can not only give you hot air from the front but from the back. So I am absolutely.
No.
Oh my God.
You're a new turbine.
I think we should harness the bean burger.
Absolutely.
Oh, listen. I just want to go to Mike Guardia, military Mike. You were in a tank. How the hell did you guys handle each other?
Oh gosh, darn.
In a tank. Like, I mean,
I
mean, did this come up? Was this part of things like, did this become?
No, wait, do you have air conditioning in a tank?
Well, no air conditioning per se, but we did have a hack that we used. So the tank
Okay.
had what was called an NBC overpressurization system, and NBC stands for nuclear, biological, and chemical. Well, what it is it's this air hose,
Oh.
right? That is supposed to hook up to your it's supposed to hook up to your gas mask in the case of in case of a biological attack. So what we do is
Oh, yeah.
instead of using it for that purpose, I mean, we can if the need arises. But what we did instead is we would take the cold air hose and we would stick it down the front of our uniforms, and that of course would be a Johnny on the spot AC system and kept us cool. And the smells were probably a lot worse inside the tank than what we knew or even what we were cognizant of it at the time. But when you take a bunch of sweaty guys and you just keep them out in the field for so long, after about a week, I mean, your whole sense of smell is completely desensitized. You really don't smell anything o- over the metal and over the smell of the gunpowder and all of the depleted
Mm.
uranium you're shooting.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, right.
I
yeah.
could just
So
see like a bunch of guys
Don't
in
talk.
the tank
Don't
passing the hose, like, dude, you need the hose. You need it
you
now.
need the hose. No, but when he was talking about chemical gas masks and stuff, I just went like, okay, when we meet Joey, I'm gonna
Oh
go visit
boy.
Mike first and get a gas
They get a
mask.
gas mask.
If
I
we go
mean,
to, I'm just saying.
here's the thing you need to understand. I'm not saying I have no empirical data that I am smelly because and my wife is too politic to say so. But I will just say that while olfactorily you might be damaged, from a musical perspective, I am remarkably in tune. That's all I have to say about it.
But listen, it's vibration. See,
It's
listen,
all
a good,
frequency, man.
listen, I'm just gonna say a really good break
That's
of wind
funny.
has good
Yeah.
vibration and you can feel
Uh,
it. Seriously, like the
Mm.
silent ones, like, oh, come on. Like,
Silent
Well,
but
come
that's
on.
deadly.
nothing about me is silent, Lisa. So that's
Well, all right. So let's talk about music. We've, oh, geez. Let's go to Elvis.
You started
Joey.
it.
And I know I want to hear what Mike Guardia has on tap for music. I know Mike Dunmire's got some Alice in Chains, and this is an
Good call.
interesting thing when we talk about military music. And Elvis served in the military, and that was famous. And yeah, apparently you've got some stories.
Yeah. So I one of the people when we first started talking about this show, I was thinking, who was it that served in the military that was also a musician? And so there were several people that came to mind: Elvis and Johnny Cash.
Mhm.
Both of them, not only because I admire them as artists, and also admire that they served their country and did that. In Elvis's case, kind of at the expense of his budding career. But they all recorded at the famous Sun Studio in Memphis, which is real dear to my heart because my band was on tour and we had a day off, and I was like, that's stupid. We should not have a day off. Let's do something. And we found out that the Sun Studio was a museum from 10 to 6. And then from 7 to 10, you could rent the studio at an astronomically high rate, a very high rate that really it wasn't worth technically. But I mean, if I was judging it based solely on what you're getting in the recording, I'd be like, this is 4 times too high. But anyway, it was more about just capturing my band at the time that we were in that moment. And it was basically a live album we recorded in the studio 3 hours. And we just did the whole album, and it was just live, and everybody was in the same room. And the engineers didn't really know how to give you all the things that one normally expects in a studio. So I was like, hey, I'd like a click track here on channel 8 in my headphone box. They're like, we don't know how to do that. And I was like, okay, we don't need a click track, never mind. And so anyway, the whole point is that whereas I use, 14 mics sometimes just on a drum set, we had 2 on this drum set. So it was really back like we were doing it in the 50s.
So basically, you guys were like the Soggy Bottom Boys. I'm
Well,
further we're out though.
I feel like there's a double entendre there as well. Yes, yeah,
I
that's
know. I
exactly
just
right.
had to go there.
Singing into a tin can. But it basically, I mean, it really was everybody in the same room, a handful of microphones for the whole band, all the mics and all the amps were all from the early '60s to mid '60s. The drum set was the drum set that had been gifted to the studio from U2 when they recorded their song "Angel of Harlem" at Sun Studio for their Joshua Tree record. So we all took turns on that. So anyway, but yeah, so I thought I think about Sun Studio, and then Johnny Cash's grandson, who owned a studio for a while and toured for a while, actually opened for me when I was in Washington, D.C. at a place called Gypsy Sally's, which is sadly no longer in business because of COVID. But anyway, all these thoughts connected in my mind when I started thinking about that. And of course, I always think of World War II, the amazing, that's a very prominent military history in my mind for a lot of reasons. But I always think of the incredible music they had during that era. So I always think of Glenn Miller. And Glenn Miller also serving as a musician. I believe he was in the Army. I can't remember, but anyway, he was definitely part in the in the military and did several broadcasts on military radio and did all kinds of things. And I believe had the rank of captain, if I'm not mistaken. But he's always such an inspiration to me for truly great ensemble music. So I always think of Glenn Miller, and there's others, but those were the ones that I always pop to my mind. First of all, we think about music that has ties to the military.
Yeah, and Glenn Miller is huge. I mean, and you also think back to, as we do our park tour, and it was interesting. When we were with Mike Dunmeyer out in Tuckahoe State Park in Maryland, we were like, oh, let's go sit in the gazebo. And there's no seating in the gazebo. Well, historically, gazebos were like the bandstand. They were the stomping grounds or whatever. What do you call it, Mike? The stomping where the politicians will go out there and start getting on their soapbox and getting on with it.
Stump speeches.
Yeah, and so gazebos, are a huge deal. And so typically, you don't have seating in a gazebo. And it dawned on me, and I was like, well, what's the point in a park, though? And then I'm like, oh, yeah. And then we saw people getting their prom pictures taken. I'm like, that's what it's for, But we had a good time. But it's interesting because you think about these bands that would play and we're documenting courthouses across the country. And so majority of the time, the courthouses come in, and I got to get Mike Guardia to help me on this. I don't know how far you go on that side of history, but courthouses come in, but they seem to have the gazebos that kind of ties into stuff, right? With that stomping, and then people gathering when someone needs to say a message, and then there's a band or like a 4th of July picnic. I'm talking about like way historically, maybe 40, 50. That's not way historic. I mean, indigenous people, that's historic, but I'm like 40s, 50s, maybe even the 30s they did it. And then like Harper's Ferry, we went and we saw a gazebo there. This was historic about the band playing in there. There's these band shells as well that Nancy and I, when we had our band, like in Oceanside, California, they tried to take this historic band shell down, and we stood up with our band, and they wanted to wipe out our coastline and give it to condos and take away for public people, which would also ruin it for the military. And well, Camp Pendleton has their own beach. We played there. Our band played there. It was really cool. It was really cool. But we had to stand up for this, band shell that they wanted to wipe out to put a condo in, and it's still there. And the Top Gun house is there, Mike Guardia, just saying. It's right around there. They serve pie. It's a very cool house. It is. It's the Top Gun house. It is. It's where they filmed Tom Cruise and Kelly.
I like the aside. They also serve pie. That was.
They're known for it. They're known for pie. They are
Top Gun pie.
Yeah, but it's a Top Gun pie, and it helps the historic people and everything. But our band used to record. We used to rehearse in a gazebo in a band shell in Heritage Village in Oceanside, which is on the back end of Camp Pendleton. And people used to come, and they would know we're rehearsing, and they would come to the village. And here we had all these historic buildings, and we had this band. It was like, what are we doing? This is insane. But
And
there's
it was
something
all
about,
kind of advice,
yeah,
which was so much fun.
they told us what, the bass needs to go up. No, no. But we're a
Yeah.
fledgling little band. But I want to go to that, Mike. What do you like these band shells? And I mean, what we're photographing in these places, doesn't it tie into military pride too? About when people come home, you need that band shell or that bandstand. Is that something that started with US? What do you know, or do
Well,
I get to stump you yet?
no, well, the
No.
whole homecoming band thing was
Mm.
was part of the fanfare that has a pretty deep rooted tradition in a lot of the Anglophone armies, and even armies abroad. It just became a lot more formalized towards the turn of the century, because there was there was a certain fanfare associated with surviving the war, and people knew very intimate that surviving war was really the only glory to be had.
Mm, yeah,
Of course,
it's freedom.
that yeah, for a
Well,
lot for a lot of folks, that kind of went by the wayside with the onset of Vietnam. But we saw a resurgence of that really really at the end of Desert Storm, when suddenly it was chic to throw the ticker tape parades and all that stuff.
So what does that feel like
Mm.
for the military themselves, those who
Well,
serve and maybe have gone out?
well, from my perspective, I'll tell you, it feels somewhat refreshing to just know that on some level that we're appreciated beyond the customary and the salutary "thank you for your service."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's in some ways it's also a little therapeutic, in the sense that you feel like your hometown, or you feel like the people who are closest to you are doing their best to make your homecoming a pleasant one, and give you a conduit to decompress from any number of things that you've either experienced, or just did help you return to civilian life in a normal form or fashion.
It's kind of like when see now where we have men and women, we talk about prisoners of war, but journalists and people getting held overseas, right? And these trades having to be made. I mean, it's been recent too. And they're coming home. It's like, how do you go from being in like a Russian prison, come home, they've been tortured, Mike, your Mike Dunmire, your family went through that, your grandfather, and then come home, you want to have it just that people actually acknowledged where you were and that they were also watching out. I think that's so important. And I feel like we talk about this in the shows. I know, it's like we've got to not forget those who are out there. And I feel like we do sometimes on the civilian side to really get out there. And it's not just this, like you're saying, oh, thank you for your service. Like, but then sometimes some veterans don't want to hear it. Like, one friend who's passed now,
It's just
his brother
repeated.
who served in World War II and then Vietnam, he's like, I don't want to talk about any of it. Like, don't even.
Yeah, well,
Like
sometimes wounds
it's
are
really
too
hard
fresh.
to know what to do. But I think if you put it out there that you do care and you do it from integrity, that means the world. If you do something integrity, you know what I mean? Not just to say something to be the popular, this is what you say. Wouldn't you say that, Mike? It's the integrity of
Yeah.
understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Mike, do you have any songs you want to add to the playlist? And everyone, this is all going to be in the show notes, and everyone's written me stories, and it's all going to be in there. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So there's there's one particular song that is a point of motivation for me. May sound a little silly or a little cliche, but if you saw the original Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio, there's that song that's playing during the montage where he's in the tournament, "You're the Best Around," and yeah, that's that has always been a song that has gotten the heart pumping for me, and one that I always find has a very strong pick-me-up value.
Oh, this is Joe Esposito.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Joe
Mm.
Esposito. Hey, listen, who doesn't like Karate Kid? Mike
Exactly.
Dunmeyer, did you watch? Come on. You know you did it.
So-
You watched Karate
so-
Kid, right?
so there-
It's how I know how to paint and wax cars.
See, exactly. Joey, I know you love movies and you listen to them mostly, right? Obviously,
Oh, yeah.
but it's
Oh,
Karate
yes.
Kid. Come
yeah,
on.
we've seen the original, 2 or 3.
I haven't seen the second and third. I've only seen the first
no,
because I feel weird about
I
seeing the
have-
second.
I have not seen the remake. There was a remake a couple years ago. We haven't watched.
No,
But
I find it hard. Now, Ralph Macchio was also in Crossroads, and
oh,
anything
what a
that right
fantastic film! That
is
was
that
a
not
great
one of the
film.
best and greatest soundtracks?
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
there's
that's
the
more
old
my
gray whistle
style.
test. The old gray whistle test. I encourage people to go and Google this on YouTube. Old gray whistle test down in Mississippi with Ry Cooder
I
from
love
that.
that song.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything, but I'm like, like just play that when I die. Like that's all I care about. And it has to be that singer. He's passed on. Just when we were going to interview him, he died. Sucked.
No,
He's
that
like one of the
sucks.
best singers on the planet.
You're too late.
I know, but there's a song that Jimmy Yessian, the late and great Jimmy Yessian, who's been on our show for years, and he did pass away from pancreatic cancer. We were talking about that earlier. And he wrote a song for his dad, and we've played it on every Memorial Day show. And I'm gonna figure out how to do it. It's not on Spotify. He didn't do the Spotify thing. Him and the Tall Men group didn't. They basically told Spotify what they thought. And but I'll figure out a way that it is included on the playlist. Otherwise, I'll have a link in the show notes. His dad served in World War II, and it's an amazing song because it was about coming a realization of what his dad had actually gone through. And I think there's something where someone may have gone to war and fought, and they come home, they don't communicate maybe, and they want, joy and happiness and solitude as well to sit with it and figure it out. But his relationship with his dad was not good
to
on those
heal.
terms. He had to heal, and as
Yeah,
a young
they
kid,
have
he
to
didn't
heal.
understand. So anyway, the song is very, very touching and deep. And then right after he did his album, he passed. He's an incredible singer-songwriter. But that is something, Mike, that do you find that with going into the stories that you write about the military men and women that you write about, that in these stories like Hal Moore, and well, Hal Moore is famous, but the family still, like, I know that was like a strong military family. They understood it and grew up with that.
Right.
But are there families that they had to really kind of all process that, understanding when someone comes home, there's a process.
Yeah, and I think that's something that broader swaths of society don't really understand. They don't really get. They don't seem to grasp, for better or for worse, that when these veterans come back, or even after they get out of the army for however long that they've been in, they really just need time to decompress. It's like, don't ask them when they're going to do this. Don't ask them when they're going to do that. Don't say, okay, well, you should have had enough time to do that. Like, no, dude, you don't get to make that call. That's not your decision to make. It's not your determination. Let the person decompress, let them heal, and also understand healing is not a linear process.
Yeah.
Sometimes you backslide. Sometimes you have to cycle through the stages of grief again. And one thing that struck me from one of the guys who I wrote about in the Combat Diaries, he said that
At this point in my life, he was like, gosh, I want to say he was maybe 87 at the time. He said, at this point in my life, I have forgiven the Japanese for what they've done, but I have to forgive them multiple times every month because,
That's funny.
because those cycles of grief, they stay, and for some,
Mhm.
you'll cycle through all the stages of grief, either every year or every month, but time really can be your ally, where
Mm.
you'll still cycle through those stages, but the RPMs will be a lot slower with every passing year.
Yay.
Yeah. It takes time. I mean, it's healing in
No,
time.
well, because I mean, some of the things that have happened are so inhumane
Mhm.
that people see in war that, I
Or
mean,
part of
how
it.
I don't know that we're um psychologically able to handle it for a long time. You have to process, process, process. We're not like a jackal who goes out to go hunting and kill a rabbit and think
Yeah.
nothing of it. It's different. That the war is not like go feed yourself.
Mhm.
It's a
Right.
whole different, it's a whole thing, and it's only a human thing. It's not an animal thing.
Mm.
So I don't know where that puts on the scale in an animal.
No.
But
Well, you have to be careful.
it's something that takes a long time to get past with what
Mm.
people see on the battlefield and what they see during their service, what they see as they're training for it. And I mean, and I think the same with policemen, that sometimes they are
They need a
faced with
break.
things that they even their training doesn't even cover.
Mhm.
Like all these mall shootings and things like that. It's like, what, what the
It's
heck?
getting it's
No,
getting
what's going
crazy.
on?
It's
So when a policeman or a security officer at a mall, is he expected to take down the shooter with a machine gun? Yeah, I was like, what? It does this training even cover that?
I don't know. I don't know. And then we have some of the policemen who are racist and kill people and hurt them. So we have a mixed bag there on that, which is unfortunate. But um, I want to go back to the music side of this because Mike, uh, military Mike, you told us once on a show that you guys have found a way to play music in your tanks. Well,
Yes.
tell
That's
everybody about
awesome.
this because we're on the music part now. So
Okay.
like,
All righty. So for any long patrols or just any long field problems that we were on, you have to wrestle with any hours of boredom. And
Yeah.
as a matter of that's pretty par for the course. You'll have a few moments of really intense activity followed by hours of boredom. And
Gosh.
especially if you're in a convoy going from one stretch to another, well, with no one to talk to but your radio, and however many other vehicles and leaders who are on the same radio net, you find ways to keep yourself entertained and your crew entertained within the confines of your tank. So what we had found out we could do was, if we spliced the wires of our MP3 players, we could route it through the intercom connectors uh, through the tank's comm system. And what that would do is it would play internally. It would play internally throughout the tank, and it would come through our headsets. And it was surprisingly easy to do, because you could just
Cool.
splice those wires. You could hook it up to the negative terminal and the positive terminal to the intercom squawk box, and it would route the music throughout the headphones of everybody on the tank. And it was great because we could be rolling out of the gate and we could be rocking some AC/DC or some Black Sabbath.
hell
Where you had to
yeah.
be careful though, was that you had to make sure that it was set to internal only, because one thing
could happen if you didn't switch the comm gear to the right internal frequency. You could actually broadcast that music to every other tank in your unit.
Oh, that'd be funny.
Yeah,
Funny. I like that.
yeah, which has actually happened on an odd occasion where where somebody was blasting what they thought was really inspirational music, and then everybody all the way up to the battalion commander is hearing Axl Rose when he's trying to give a tactical order over the radio net, and of course you hear the irate commander's voice coming over the net. It's like, "This is Black Hawk 6. Who the hell is rocking Guns N' Roses? Knock it off."
No way. Guns N' Roses. You hear Axel and Axel, because Axel has that whiny voice too. He's all, "I go down, down, down."
I know, but here comes the sentence, "Who got us a convoy."
Oh, see, Nancy just wants Chris Christopherson on everything. But Joey, you've got to give props for this, right? For music, hearing music rolling through on tanks. I mean,
I love it. I think it's a great idea.
I know. This is fantastic. And oh my gosh, I love this. So AC/DC, huh, Mike? So what was your best AC/DC? Like, do you have a favorite?
Oh yeah. So I think pound for pound, my favorite is Thunderstruck.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And that really was the song of choice whenever we would roll out of the gate. It would be Thunderstruck. Yeah. And then let's see.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Take me
then
back to my teenage years right there. Thunderstruck. Oh, wow,
I
wow,
know.
wow, wow, wow.
yeah, and I think it would be a stretch to say that this is the softer side, but the softer side of the metal that we would play would be like Van Halen and
Yeah, but it is the softer side, seriously. Like, and then you've got Ozzy, right?
Wow.
Ozzy's like,
right.
He's got war, come on. But like, I always thought Van Halen was, on the softer side.
Kind of poppy, right?
Yeah, a little bit on the poppy side. And it depended. Like,
That's
and
so
then if you
funny.
had David Lee Roth first,
Oh gosh.
that's a whole Joey, come on, what's gone
But
with Van Halen? Like, what are your thoughts on Van Halen? Because seriously, he's got Cabo Wabo.
From a technical standpoint, Sammy Hagar is the better technical singer, but I do find that the more entertaining singer is David Lee Roth. I think there's more. I think there's more. I think there's more attitude. I think it really exemplifies. And I think Van Halen always had pop sensibilities, but I think they became more focused with Sammy Hagar. It became much poppier.
Yeah, but David Lee Roth is a musician too, like a musician.
Yeah, he plays guitar and
bluegrass, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, his voice has not particularly aged that well. But then again, he was out there screaming, doing all those crazy high notes and stuff night after night after night, and all the alcohol and drugs and tobacco did not help. That's not good for the old voice. So, but I love both incarnations. I really do. And I got on a Van Halen kick some point during COVID, and I've read about five books about them. And
wow.
And it was kind of interesting just to sort of cross-reference them and see how many times the same story was told in all the books. Like, okay, well, that's probably true then.
It's like looking at Crosby, David Crosby. I read his biography that he wrote, man, he was
good point.
Yeah,
Fleetwood Mac was good too.
It's fan, but anyway, but I love Van Halen. I think, from a technical standpoint, there's things I could point out that nobody else would probably care about, but at the end of the day, the technical side of music making is important, but I'll take attitude over technical proficiency.
Exactly. Soul. You got to have soul and dirt and grit in there. You can't. The technical stuff. We've been talking about that on shows, and Nancy, don't ask Nancy what she thinks about Eric Clapton versus other guitarists. But anyway, that's a whole other show. I just wanted to poke her there a little bit, but okay. So, but now think about like Van Halen. Remember Jump coming out? Like,
sure,
it's such like the '80s vibe, right?
Absolutely.
That whole record was really wonderful, and I think that's where they started doing things that were. I think that's when some of the pop
Different.
sensibilities started, but I do think they were very groundbreaking in several ways with that record. Interestingly, I was a little kid. I mean, probably about, I don't know, probably, let's see, I was probably about 7 in 1984, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I remember Jump had just been released as a single, and I was obsessed with it as a child. And I was very fearless as a blind child. I just, got into all kind of scrapes and fell over and all kind of stuff. Tried to ride a bicycle, lost 2 teeth.
Oh, that's good.
Thought
Jeez.
I said, oh, I want to. My friends are jumping out of swings at school. I can do that too. Broke my arm. So. But anyway, I remember my parents had taken me on vacation right around when Jump came out to Las Vegas, and my dad. Technically, children were not allowed in several places that I was taken. My dad just told everybody that I was a little person and that I wasn't a child, which is, of course, not true, but that's how I got in. So
What? Like you're like a little midget?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what he said.
You can't say that word.
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry.
But that's I'll spank you for that later. But anyway, so stop looking so pleased. So anyway,
I am smiling. I'm smiling right now because now
I know you are.
No, you
So
have
anyway,
no idea. I just went to a different weird movie in my head.
I heard a local band in the casino start playing Jump, and I was, like I said, I was about 7, and I was so excited that I just ran away from my parents and ran towards the music, and then fell down a flight of stairs.
Oh, good, Joey.
Yeah.
I didn't even know to ask you this question. My God.
Yeah. So anyway, there's my memory of Jump.
Oh my God. So okay, so Mike Gordy, you brought up Van Halen. What's your Van Halen song? Because I'm adding these to the playlist here. You got to do this.
Well, it's a for me, it's a two-way tie between Jump and Panama.
Oh, both great. You can't go wrong.
Well, we could put both. We can do whatever we want. We can make music playlists as big and long because they're supposed to last a week. So we'll put them both. But Panama's got to be in there too, I think. Yeah, Mike?
I got to jump in with a Van Halen song too then, because Cradle Will Rock was kind of like a gateway getting in metal.
That's a great song.
Have you seen
Junior's Grades? Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's
in the books I was reading about it, that song started off, it doesn't sound like it, but it started off with an electronic piano that Eddie distorted and put a flanger on, and that's that real heavy.
See, but now we have to be nice about him.
It's
See,
got the
wah
wah. It's got the yan, like the cat.
Okay, so but see,
all great tracks.
It's exactly what cats do.
Well, but I think this is great because Joey, you put in John Fogerty and Fortunate Son, and his birthday is May 28th, I believe.
I did not know that, but he's someone else that I knew that served in the military, and he's one of my favorite artists. I mean, just such a talent, and and probably one of the most litigious men in music. I mean, he's been in lawsuits for ever since. I mean, I've been aware. Yeah, he finally won. He finally won and got his music. So I was very excited.
And so did the. But
that's been like a 40-year or 50-year period that he's been suing. I mean, it's just been awful.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
What's his name? Just won too. What's his name?
Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran just won. Yeah.
Absolutely correctly. And this is an important point. People that are not in the music business, certainly can't appreciate some of the nuances that we have to think about. But when you talk about copyright infringement, I'm a big believer. If someone's stolen your song, then you should get them. But the fact is that we all are inspired by each other. So it's virtually impossible to have a completely original thought. I mean, because you're inspired by. So if I do a harmony now I've stolen something from the Beatles because I used the sixth in the harmony. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Exactly.
So important for people to know, there are only 12 notes in the Western pitch system.
Exactly.
All right. Typically, only 7 of them are used in a given key. There are ways to use all 12 in a given key, but it's tricky. And
Yeah.
it certainly is more avant-garde, or it doesn't sound, it's not natural to the ear. So the point is, typically now you're talking about roughly, most songs have at maximum 7 notes available. So now you're talking about 7 notes, millions of songs. And there's going to be some repeats, guys. I mean, there's just, but the thing is, the copyright law in the United States, in Western countries, is very clear that you cannot copyright titles, you cannot copyright rhythms, you cannot copyright chord changes. The only thing you can copyright are lyrics and melody. And so that really, and like, you may remember, this is my soapbox, so I'll get off it quickly, but the Led Zeppelin, there was a lawsuit about Stairway to Heaven. So first of all, the riff that they said was stolen was a chord progression, therefore not music. I mean, not lyrics, not melody, so not protected by copyright. Secondly, the other part about that lawsuit that's important is, while the way the chords were phrased was unique in rock, it was not unique in jazz or Latin. It was a very standard motif called passing minor, with something else called common tones. And so that's a very common technique in Latin music and in jazz music. It is not common in rock music. So that's why that riff sounds so distinctive. But really, it's a very common chordal technique. So anyway, there was nothing to steal, is my point.
That and that, if they put that in, I think most of us that started playing guitar, that's one of the first things we learned. Stairway to Heaven, a Smoke on the Water was like one of the first things. Were you going to do that, or are you going to play Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley? Like, I'm doing Smoke on the Water and Stairway.
But
I actually have my keyboard player's name, Tom Rule.
If you're an artist, okay, like when we go to paint, we buy tubes of paint. There's very few of us that grind down the compounds and get the chemicals and make our own paints anymore.
Exactly.
So now, but you can blend the colors and possibly come up with a shade of the color that nobody's ever seen before, but I pretty much doubt it. But there you go. It's how you use it and what expression you're using when you're painting. So,
it goes full circle back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, which is communication. So it's all about how you communicate using the medium of music. That's where the originality, that's where the originality comes in.
I've got to go to Mike Guardia here. You're an author. I know he has to go. So on that, everyone, MikeGuardia.com. But Mike, thank you for joining us.
I'm a big fan. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Joey.
You're welcome, my friend.
Thanks for joining us. And Mike, you've copywritten all your books, right?
I have.
Of course, yeah.
Don't copy Mike. He's uncopyable. Anyway, so thank you for joining us, Mike. It's been a pleasure. Everyone, MikeGuardia.com is the website for Mike, and he'll be back on our show in June. He's on every first Monday, and in June we're going to be talking about D-Day and some of the stories from his book, The Combat Diaries. So thank you so much, Mike. You take care.
Okay, ladies, you too. Always a pleasure. It was good talking to everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Mike, you've got Mike Dunmeyer, and when it comes to like politics, do you have to copyright your stuff, or do people steal stuff? Like, I just have to go there. Or shouldn't even ask that. I shouldn't, but it's true. Is there like speech stealing that happens? I mean, we're in the DC area.
Yeah, I mean, you're not supposed to, but there have been some notable speech thefts recently. I think Melania stole some lines from Michelle Obama on a speech. We've seen things like this happen from time to time. But of course,
it's borrowing.
Yeah, no. I want to go to your music playlist. I think this is cool, and Joey's got more too. But we are gonna have to. I can't help how the show goes. We all have good stuff. I want to go to your music playlist here because you brought in Alice in Chains. So Rooster. See, because he ate like chicken sandwiches with us. That's what happened.
Something like that. Yeah. So I love such a wide range of music, but I think if you had, forced me to pick what was my favorite, I love guitar-driven alt rock. I think the early
Mm.
90s was a particularly fertile time for that music. There was so much great music going on. And I remembered, reading the liner notes of this album and seeing the song Rooster, which is about, I forget which band member it was, but one of the band members' father was a Vietnam vet, and it's really dedicated to him and the experience of Vietnam vets. And what the liner notes talked about was that he was really, the father was really moved that they did this, and it got him to open up and begin to talk about his experiences in Vietnam, which he never had, and it
Wow.
brought them closer. And it kind of resonated for me too. I mentioned my father went to West Point. He also fought in Vietnam, and he and I are very, very close. And we've always been able to talk about really anything. We were kind of best friends as well as father and son. But one thing he never spoke about was Vietnam. And in high school, I did a project where I had to interview him about that. It was the first time he'd ever really talked about it at length. And, as Mike was talking about it, there's a way that people process what they went through there and kind of compartmentalize so that they can move on. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting angle for that song. And of course, it's just an absolutely kick-ass song too. So that doesn't hurt at all.
That whole album, Dirt, is fantastic. That's a great record.
Yeah. Well, listen, Alice in Chains, is huge, but it's interesting when you start making these connections back to military too, right? And then it's the guitar. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think music, and Joey, I know that words mean a lot, lyrics mean a lot, and I write songs and stuff and get the power of words. But we've done so much lately on instrumentals. And I really believe, like, you can listen to an instrumental and know where someone's going, and like you could be in a war and listen to this music, and it was written for you to get through it. Like you can hear certain songs just instrumental. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can communicate with lyrics or without, and even songs like, I don't speak another language, which is regrettable because most Americans don't, which is really sad. But I can listen to music in French or Russian or Spanish or whatever, and still understand the basic concept of the song. Even though I don't speak the language, you can tell if it's a romantic song, or if it's an angry song, or if it's the power is definitely twofold. I obviously, I write both, so I write instrumentals and songs with lyrics, and I like them all. And you have great communicators, like we were talking about Van Halen earlier, so like Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar and all those guys. But also, one of the songs on my playlist that I sent you was from Jimi Hendrix, who also served in the military. And he has an interesting, he's one of those guys that has, again, from a technical perspective, he's good, but he's not crazy technical. But the fact is, every note he plays is very powerful. And he has a tie to my hometown of Macon, Georgia, because he was a guitar player for Little Richard, who's from Macon for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm a big Hendrix fan on a number of reasons. But yeah, I think you listen to him. I mean, when you listen to Hendrix tunes, it's not about the vocals.
Listen, but we got Joey's version of Red House up there on the playlist as well. And Red House, I mean, it's like Jimi Hendrix to me is one of the most important.
I think it's guitar. I find it. I gotta be careful what I say here, but against other really famous guitars, one's got soul and the other doesn't.
Yeah,
I'm with you. I mean, Hendrix is just, it's the notes he chooses to play. It's how he plays them. It's his hands. It's the way he bends. Yeah, the way he makes the guitar sing.
He's sexual. Yeah. It's sexual. Blues and rock is sexual, and if you don't bring that in, you don't have it.
No, but it's only sexual. It could be happy, it can be sad.
No,
but he does it enough to let you know what he's doing.
I agree.
But
it's not a formula. Like sometimes I feel like other people are writing to a formula.
Yeah.
There is a
Yes.
lot of that in the modern music business. There really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he
And
did.
I get bored with it really easy.
I got
Yeah.
to tie
Like
in. I got to tie into the Jimi Hendrix because we're running out of time. I got to tie in.
Yeah.
Brian Tarquin is part of our playlist. He was on our
Mm.
show a few months ago with his new album. It's a Heavy Friends album called Brothers in Arms, and he's got guitarists
Mm.
like Joe Satriani, Vinnie
Oh
Moore,
wow.
from UFO, Ron Bumblefoot. Oh, talk about Guns N' Roses. Ron Bumblefoot Tall is on there.
Bumblefoot?
Alex DeRosa, yeah, from
I love that.
Travis Stever is on there. Jeff Duncan from Armored Saint. Johannes White. I can't. Son of Bach. Don't ask me to pronounce any of this. But anyway, and Chris Haskett from Henry Rollins Band. Gerald Gradwell from Tangerine Dream is on this, and Brian Tarquin is like he's won every award and everything, right? Emmy awards, everything. Does a lot in jazz, but then he wears this other hat, and well, he didn't wear a hat on the interview. He wore his Jimi Hendrix jacket on the interview. So
Nice.
got the link to this. His
That's
latest
funny.
album, Heavy Friends, called Brothers in Arms, features everybody on there. And the songs are inspired by military soldiers who fought for their country, and partial proceeds from the sales go to the Fisher House Foundation, who supplies housing to veterans' families while they are hospitalized. So I had to bring that up.
Nice.
So
That's
we have to
fantastic.
play
Awesome.
that. And since Mike Guardia will be on talking about D-Day, I thought we are going to play the song D-Day in the playlist. Also going to give a shout out to Stormy Monday for T-Bone Walker because he was born on May 28th. One of my most famous, favorite musicians of all time is T-Bone Walker. Anyway, and that ties back to Joey because of the Allman Brothers covering Stormy Monday Blues.
What a great rendition.
I know. Going back to Mike Dunmar, Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah, we
Dude.
raised him. We talked about him over the weekend, and that was the reminder. I mean, so Far Away Coast.
Mm.
You know, I love their blend of kind of the Irish folk sound with punk rock. And Far Away Coast, I think is really much more like an Irish folk song. But you know, again, just kind of very plaintive about the experience of a U.S. soldier going to war in a foreign country and what they're dealing with emotionally and mentally, and it really does resonate.
Speaking of traveling soldiers, one of my songs on there is the Chicks now, not the Dixie Chicks, the Chicks. Traveling Soldier. That song is insanely, the lyrics, the sentiment of this soldier, and you just got to listen to it. Very cool. We added it on there too. Going back to you, Joey, you've got Johnny Cash Hurt, which I thought Trent Reznor did that originally from Nine Inch Nails, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great song off the Further Down. Oh no, I'm sorry, Downward Spiral record. And you know what's interesting is when Rick Rubin and Johnny Cash got together to produce those sessions, which
I
were the
love
last
Rick
albums
Rubin.
Cash. Oh, me too. Which is he's got a great book out, by the way, too. If you want to read that.
Really?
But yeah, but he did these wonderful, just sort of very spare instruments. You know, typically acoustic guitar and vocal, very stripped down Johnny Cash, and Trent Reznor even said, "Well, that song is Johnny Cash's now. He did it, you know, better than I ever could, in a way that was more raw and honest and vulnerable." And I thought, you know, when I think about Hurt, that song makes me think of scars, and I've got a number of physical and emotional scars from being a very sick child, and having to deal with a lot of medical emergencies, and you know, almost dying several times. And there's some trauma there that I've had to work hard to overcome and not let become too big a deal in my life. But when I think about Hurt, and I think about the idea of scarring, I certainly think about the trauma that there is in being in the military and being in combat. So that's kind of why so Johnny Cash was obviously had served his country in the military, so that fit in. And then I think about the scarring that one has to deal with when you come home.
Exactly.
You know. So that was the reason I thought of that too. Yeah.
Emotionally scarring and Hurt is I think when Johnny Cash was going through the end of his life and he did all those recordings, it was so big. I do want to touch on Seaborn Jones. he is a poet, and you brought him up, and we're going to put that on the Spotify playlist too. We're going to have some poetry. We'll also have some Hollywood history from Steve Schneikert, and this is going to go back to when Steve did a podcast, a Hollywood history podcast from when Nancy and I did a show, a live broadcast from Julian, California, from the American Legion way back when. I think it was like 2013 or 14, Nancy. And they
Don't make
made a
that sound like it's so
literal,
long ago.
I know, like, but they made a bomb shelter. Like, this is when we ran things on phones and
Right.
made a bomb shelter, and they had like a 4th of July thing going, and we interviewed veterans, and there was one politician that came on our show and called them crazy. Yeah, his last name is Hunter, California. Anyway, one of them
Wow.
went to jail recently, so that's good. But anyway,
Okay.
anyway, I didn't mean to
All
go
right.
there, but anyway,
Dude.
but Steve's Hollywood history, he did this especially for that, but I want to include a link to that for everybody in the show notes. But go back to Seaborn Jones because he also served.
Yeah, he was in the Marines, and he is a Georgia author that sadly passed away back. I heard him read poetry in my hometown at an arts summer camp that I was in when I was about 17 years old. And I said to myself, one day I'm going to record this guy and release his poetry on audio. And it's finally in like 2006, I finally did it. And I'm really glad of that, because to read his poetry is amazing, but to hear him read it is even more powerful. To tell people, well, it kind of sounds like a very Southern Jack Nicholson on Downers. So he has a very interesting delivery. And I'm so excited because I'm so glad I did that. I'm going to be honest. I haven't even made my money back on that project. It didn't sell particularly well. But I'm so excited that I did it, because his family, when he passed away, they had no recordings of him reading. And so I was very honored and proud that I had preserved that. And he has another poem called Semper Fi, which is about some hard times he had adjusting to being a civilian after being in the military. But this poem is about World War II, and it's also references Glenn Miller, which is another reason I thought of it. So yeah, I thought it would be appropriate. It's really, I think you'll enjoy it.
Oh, absolutely. We've got the CD, and we have a
Yeah,
CD
you
player
do.
in our car. That's why I don't get rid of her. Nancy,
Yeah.
you have a song?
Yeah, I just wanted, in my grandmother's honor, she loved the song Praise the Lord and Pass the Ammunition. And this is a World War II song, but she always wanted to change it to Praise the Lord, but Pass the Ammunition. And it's a song that I think my dad had the sheet music to it, and I tried to play it on the piano. But it's quite a jazzy little song, and I think that Glenn Miller probably played it at some point down the road. But it was what I was told, whether it's true or not, because I've learned that what I was told when I was growing up is not always true. Just saying. But that when the troops would go into battle, that some of them would start singing that, like, praise the Lord that we're still here, but to make sure we're still here tomorrow, pass the ammunition.
Wow.
And so I don't know if that's true or not. I really, really.
We'll have to look it up. If we can find
plausible to me. It sounds
We'll
plausible to me.
put it on the playlist. We'll put it on the playlist. We got to get going time wise. Mike Dunmeyer, everyone, has got Disturbed on there with this song Indestructible. That's a good one. He's got Wings, Let 'Em In, and the Talking Heads, Road to Nowhere. Mike, did you pick that for our Love Your Parks tour? Because we keep circling around.
Did I?
Like, I
Yeah,
don't know. I'm just
I
kidding.
was looking at, so there are songs that relate to war and soldiers' experiences and
Yeah,
things like that. And then there's just tons of songs that are driven by a military cadence. And
yeah.
Let 'Em In and Road to Nowhere, both great songs that have that backing to them.
Oh,
T-Heads are a favorite of mine for years and years and years. So
oh.
it's likely I have brought them up before.
I know. No, but thank you, Mike. It was good to see you. Thank you, Joey, for co-hosting
Oh,
every fourth
y-
Sunday here on Big Blend Radio with our new weekly blend. We're excited because now we also have a magazine that comes out every week. So we got you covered every week, every day. So go to blendradioandtv.com to subscribe for the magazine, but you can go to bigblendradio.com to hear this show as it airs every Sunday or anytime thereafter. We're on YouTube, Spotify,
I-
every place
can
you can
I
imagine.